You that might not know me, my name is Dave Arnold, the DA here in Lebanon County. Our office, along with the County Detective Bureau from Lebanon County, we concluded the investigation into the fatal discharge of a firearm that occurred in South Londonderry Township by a police officer back on August 3rd, 2015, and that would have been near the intersection of State Route 117 and State Route 322. We concluded that the officer involved was justified in employing deadly force to subdue Joshua Malave, who had just burglarized the Horseshoe Pike gun shop. The officer could not avoid using deadly force with complete safety for himself and or the other officers and residents of the community. As such, the officer's actions in employing deadly force were lawful and they were justified. On Monday, August 3rd, 2015, at approximately 5:13 a.m., Lebanon County Dispatch advised the South Londonderry Township Police Department of an alarm at the Horseshoe Pike gun shop. Shortly after the first responding officer arrived, he observed a rear window to the gun shop had been pried open and ammunition lying on the ground below the window. As you can see from the photograph on the screen, this was what the officers observed when they arrived at the scene. You can see the numerous boxes of ammunition, multiple handguns lying there, in addition to a few other items. As the first responding officer approached the window, he first encountered a subject dressed in camouflage. That person ran east across Forge Road toward a soybean field. Behind the soybean field is a cornfield as well as a private residence next to the cornfield. The officer yelled, "Police, stop," but was ignored by the subject. The responding officer at that point lost sight of the subject due to darkness and advised dispatch of the circumstances, asking for additional units. Other officers began to arrive, and the officers attempted to set up a perimeter around the location where the subject was seen fleeing. As officers arrived, they also discovered multiple handguns lying underneath the broken window, along with the ammunition, again depicted in the photograph on the screen. Shortly thereafter, as it started to become a little bit more light out, an officer observed what he believed to be a moving person in the soybean field. 3 officers at that time were standing next to each other and next to the soybean field. The officers had their weapons drawn at this time and were yelling commands to the suspect. At that time, the suspect jumped up to his feet. He was seen wearing a ski mask, carrying a backpack, and a rifle. And again, I'll show you a photograph. This photograph is actually taken, as you can see, a couple days prior. That would have been at the Thousand Trails campgrounds. This was a camera that was happened to be posted on a tree that we were able to obtain photos from a couple days. Mr. Malave was geared when the police encountered him, plus the additional fact that he had a ski mask covering his face, a black ski mask over his face and his head. At that point, the suspect ran in the general direction of the private residence that I already mentioned, which again was located next to the cornfield. The suspect was also running in the direction of another officer who was located near the private residence, and the 3 officers who were standing together gave chase at that time. While chasing the suspect, the officer repeatedly yelled for him to stop or they will shoot. The suspect continued to ignore all their commands. At that point, out of fear for the safety of his fellow officers, anyone who may have been inside the private residence, and his own safety, one of the officers fired a shot at the armed suspect. The suspect then returned fire with 1 shot from his rifle that you see him carrying in the photograph. The same officer again yelled to the suspect to stop or they will shoot. The suspect again continued to ignore commands, and the officer fired a 2nd shot, striking the suspect and killing him. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about with regard to the safety concerns, we have some overview photos where it's not necessarily the easiest thing to see, but you can see the trail through the soybean field. At this location, there's an officer standing. That would have been the area where Mr. Malave ultimately was shot and killed. You can see the cornfield off within yards of where he was running. You can see the residence and the cover he would have been able to obtain in that direction had he kept going that way. And the officers were out in the soybean field with no cover for themselves, basically sitting ducks if he were to be able to get to cover and turn back and fire at them. Again, we've concluded that the officer was legally justified in firing his weapon on this occasion. He was justified because he did reasonably believe that deadly force was necessary to protect himself and others from death or serious bodily injury.